intermittent fasting.
Fasting prolongedly, 3 days a month, 7 days every 3 months.
Prolonged fasting, 48, 72 hours or longer.
Extended fasting is all the rage.
Fasting, and more importantly, the extended fast, prolonged fasting.
A popular way of losing weight.
Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is a massively requested video. When I tell you I've never received so many DMs on Instagram about a specific topic like I have about this one ever since I first talked about fasting on Bella's Fit Guide. You guys have just asked me non-stop to do a video on this. I'm sorry it took so long, but I have been researching, really making sure that I get all of the best information for you guys so that you can leave this video knowing everything you need to know about fasting, how to do it, when to do it, literally like your ultimate guide to fasting. I really hope you guys enjoy this one. I have put in the hours, I really have. These are just my bullet points, so this is going to be a two-part situation. Part 2 will come out in a couple of weeks because there is just so much to fit in one video. So if I miss a topic out in this one, it will most likely be in the next one because I really am trying to cover like everything. If you sent me a DM or a questions thing on my Instagram, Bella Fernandez, it will be answered in this video. Trust me, I went through every single one. There were hundreds. Before we jump into all the science, all of the facts, there's just a few things I need to clarify first because this is a dangerous topic to talk about, I feel like, in the fitness space. Okay, so disclaimer number 1 is everything in this video, please take it with a pinch of salt. Take your own conclusions. Science changes, science evolves. There's constantly new research, there's constantly new studies, there's constantly new information. And I think the worst thing you can do is have a closed mind and be ignorant even receiving this information, but then also receiving this information and then never believing anything else. If you follow me on YouTube or Instagram or wherever, I will make sure to, post a video if something serious changes about this information. I highly doubt it would. There's always the possibility with anything in science. For example, the holy grail of weight loss was calories in versus calories out for years, and that has now proven time and time again to be completely wrong. A calorie that you get from an avocado isn't the same as highly processed bread. It just is completely different. So measuring everything equally has proven time and time again to be utterly and objectively wrong. Let me know if you like this video. Any feedback at all honestly would make my day. I can also make more videos like this in the future. They do take a lot of time to make, so obviously I just want to know that you guys are enjoying it. So all of my information and all of my conclusions do come from reviewing studies and listening to doctors who actually specialize in the field, like for example Dr. Mindy Pelz and Dr. Jason Fung. Those are like my two main, but there are probably about 15 others. I really tried to be as broad as I can with my research and not just focus on like what one person is saying, because I think that's the worst way to draw a conclusion. Like, you need to really understand what the entire field is saying in order to draw the best conclusion, and that's what I've done with this, hence why it took me a long time, because I really wanted to make sure like what is the consensus here and what is something most people can all agree on, and then also what makes the most sense, what do the studies show, what do just everything. There are a list of people who should not be fasting, are not a candidate for fasting at all. You can actually cause serious harm to yourself if you are not, suitable for fasting. Please do your own research if you're taking medication. I know that things like thyroid medication or like thyroid problems can be a bit of an issue, or diabetes as well. I think people with diabetes can really benefit from fasting, but it also has to be very closely supervised because you can run into a lot of risks. But people who are breastfeeding or pregnant absolutely should not be fasting at all. You really should just be focusing on getting enough calories, nurturing. Anybody who is even slightly underweight, absolutely stay away from fasting. It can actually be extremely dangerous. If you don't have body fat on you and you do a 5-day fast, like, you could actually end up in hospital or or much worse. Like please do not fast, especially prolonged fasting or any sort of calorie deficit at all if you are underweight. And then the second person is if you've ever had or if you have any sort of eating disorder, just stay away from it. It's honestly not going to be beneficial to you. It's just going to be more of a detriment. I think, yeah, technically you can still see loads of benefits in terms of the health side of things, but it's just not worth it. And if you also combine that with being underweight, it's just a recipe for absolute disaster. And I also have to say, for legal reasons, this is not medical advice. I am not a doctor. Please don't take what I say as just concrete evidence. So what is fasting? What is this? Is it a fad? Is it a trend? Is it something that you should even bother paying attention to? We're gonna get into all of that. What technically is a fast? And I do have my handy iPad here because there is a lot to go through and it needs to jog my memory, okay? My memory isn't that amazing. So what and why? What is a fast? It's a period of time where you do not consume food or anything that might spike your blood sugar / insulin. Although there are various different interpretations of this. For example, you get people that do Ramadan and they, you know, fast in a completely different way. There are people that do it for other religious reasons or other sort of cultural reasons, and they might do fasting differently. But this is the more health-focused side of fasting, not so much cultural or religious, just to clarify that as well. So some of the benefits of fasting, and these will differ in intermittent fasting and prolonged fasting, which we will also get into in a little bit, which is a big segment. But yeah, what is the benefits that you can derive from any sort of fasting? And that is honestly such a massive list that I'm going to pop them all on the screen, but I'll also read some out for you. So there is fat loss, obviously, as the biggest sort of driver for a lot of people. It resets your insulin, it heals your gut, intestinal issues, many stomach-related problems. It could be good for anti-aging, anti-wrinkles, autophagy, where your cells basically clean themselves out and renew and get rid of all of the bad cells. Hence why, you know, there are studies kind of trying to look at the benefits towards cancer and the prevention of cancer as your body clears itself out and, you know, gets rid of all of the bad cells and replaces them with new cells, hence the anti-aging and anti-wrinkles effect as well. And then also preventing Alzheimer's disease. There has actually been a study on this and how it can improve your cognitive brain function through the same process as autophagy. So honestly, this list can go on and on and on and on and on. I will link down below a full list of it, of everything that, you know, can actually come from fasting. Fasting has been ingrained in the human existence for thousands and thousands of years. Like, we have been known to fast since the beginning of time, like the beginning of the human race. We have been known for periods of fasting because that is just how it would be in the wild, like in the wild. So I guess, like, if you want evidence of something like this being tested, it has been tested for like a very long time. So definitely not just a fad. Research how to, you know, efficiently implement it into our lives, make it so that we reap all of the benefits with the least amount of risks and the least amount of side effects as well from fasting. Intermittent versus prolonged fasting. What are they? What is the difference? Which one do you do? Like, it can be so confusing as well when you kind of step into the world of fasting and you're just like, what is everyone talking about? Like, someone's doing a 5-day fast and someone's eating for 2 hours a day. Like, I'm confused. Like, please, some clarity, and that is what I'm here to do. So, two of the most common types of fast is intermittent fasting and prolonged / extended fast. So basically, intermittent is where you eat within a window every day. So for example, 16-8, so you don't eat for 16 hours, and then you have an 8-hour window where you do eat. And then this can also differ with like different times, but it's basically a period in a day where you eat. It could be 24, so you don't eat for 20 hours, you eat for 4. Prolonged fasting, extended fast, is anything pretty much over 24 hours would be considered an extended fast. So it's not just within a window of a day, within a window of 24 hours. I think the most common type of fasting is intermittent, just because it's been like a bit more of a rave, you know, it's been talked about a lot more. There's a lot more like books on it, and it's been used as this like fat loss mechanism tool, and it's been spoken about loads and kind of blew up in the past few years. And that's why I think a lot of people, when you talk about fasting, they kind of think of intermittent fasting. Pros to intermittent fasting is that it can be amazing to get your body used to a smaller like eating window, you know, kind of getting used to having less of an eating time frame, so waking up and eating, you know, a couple hours later and then stopping a couple hours earlier. It will still obviously positively affect your body because it still does give you, you know, time to rest your digestive system, your gut, like your body still has its time to repair, and we do repair a lot when we're not eating. Constant snacking has proven time and time again to be a huge negative impact on your body. It's really bad for you. I don't know who came up with the fact that like you should eat 10 tiny meals throughout the whole day, but it is so wrong and so bad for you. It's been proven that your body does need that time to rest. And even like eating too close to bedtime or eating too early, like it just, your body needs a break. And also in the morning, you know, you're breaking that fast. That's why breakfast is called break fast. Back in the old days, or even like a few centuries ago, we used to have 2 meals a day, and if you didn't eat during those 2 meals, tough luck. Like your mom would say like, hey, that's too bad, you should have eaten more at dinner, and then you don't get food for the night, and then you have to wait until the morning to get food for the next meal. But now with like the convenience of the world, we just have constant snacking, massively convenient food that you can order to your door or just snack on constantly throughout the day, and it is so bad for you. So intermittent fasting can be really good at pulling you back into a more structured way of eating, and it's still good to have like a type of window, you know, not just eat every second of the day. It can be great for your gut health, for weight loss, for inflammation, for brain health, for insulin resistance, for longevity, and a bunch more. So most of the benefits that I mentioned before, you will get a bit with intermittent fasting. Like it will still give you benefits, and it's still really good to do. It's just not the best form of fasting in my opinion. It also gives you a ghrelin hormone reset. So for example, if you always get hungry at like 8 a.m. in the morning and 12 p.m. at night, that's your ghrelin hormone basically telling you it's time to eat, it's time to eat, it's time to eat, and you get into this habit of constantly eating at those times, and it's really hard to get out of that. But once you start intermittent fasting, it can help to break those ghrelin responses, that ghrelin hormone that comes up, and you start to not feel hungry at those set times anymore, which is really handy as well. So yeah, definitely some pros to intermittent fasting. However, some drawbacks to intermittent fasting is, first of all, that intermittent fasting is not suitable for long periods of time. Since it's more similar to basically calorie reduction, aka it's less calories for a long period of time. So if you do 20 hours of no eating and then 4 hours of eating every single day, you're going to end up consuming less calories than you would eating a full day, because you can't eat enough in those 4 hours. You'd be full all the time. You wouldn't be able to hit those same number of calories. That basically ends up being just a daily calorie restriction, and your body does get used to that. If you do that for 6 months, your body will really get used to having those fewer and fewer calories. It's basically like doing an extreme cut for a very long time. Many studies actually find that reducing your calorie intake by 25% for just a few months consistently can cause an 8 to 10% reduction in metabolic rate, which is huge. Because now you'll first hit a plateau with fat loss and you'll stop losing fat. Your body will, you know, store a lot more food as fat, because it's like, okay, we've just been starving for the past 6 months. Let's hold on to as much as we can. So that's why a lot of people that do very low caloric deficit, or even just any caloric deficit for a very long time, your metabolism does slow down. Like it just will. That's just science. Not just that, but then when you try to get back to just what should be your maintenance calories, you actually start gaining a lot of weight like very quickly, which is why a lot of people struggle to keep the weight off after a long diet. And that's because your metabolism just is not accustomed to that amount of food anymore. Like you've trained it. You've basically told your body, we are in starvation mode. We have to, you know, food is not abundant. We have to hold on to it as much as we humanly possibly can, because we probably will get few calories tomorrow like we did yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. So it's the same as doing, you know, a low calorie intake or a caloric deficit for a long period of time. It would be the same with intermittent fasting if you were doing it every single day. So that is something to seriously watch out for. And I think it's probably one of the biggest mistakes people make with fat loss. I have made this mistake so many times. Consistently not getting enough calories in a day for a long period of time, no matter what you're doing, is going to slow down your metabolism. Whether that is intermittent fasting or calorie deficit, doesn't matter. If you consistently do it day in, day out, and you get your body accustomed to it, it will slow your metabolism. I'm not saying intermittent fasting is bad necessarily, I'm saying consistent intermittent fasting is bad. If you do a 16-8 eating split, so you eat for 8 hours, and in those 8 hours you are getting plenty of food and you are eating your maintenance or even above your maintenance, and you are then still doing intermittent fasting, you're fine. But the smaller the window becomes, the more difficult it gets to get those amount of calories in, so you can see where the deficit starts coming. But another con to intermittent fasting is that you don't really get that far into ketosis. So ketosis is your body switching over from glucose, which is what you find in food, so that's its energy source, switching over from glucose into ketones, and ketones is what your body produces. So it's basically pulling out its own energy source from all of the things you have stored in your body. So all of the fat that you've got stored in your body will then be used as ketones, as an energy source instead of glucose, which is derived from food. Ketosis is amazing because obviously that is literally you just burning your own fuel source, aka burning all the fat off your body, which is a-okay, and obviously is a lot of people's goals. So intermittent fasting does get you into ketosis if you do a long enough one, but it doesn't really get you that far into it to reap big rewards. So it can be really handy, especially if you're eating a ketogenic diet and also intermittent fasting. You could actually be getting quite a lot of ketones, but other than that scenario, you don't really get that far. Another con to intermittent fasting is that you don't really get into autophagy really much at all. You do a little bit depending on how long you do it for. Some people could actually get into it a little bit sooner, but typically it starts around the 20 to 24 hour mark. So you don't really see many autophagy results from doing intermittent daily fasting. Covered as much as I could on that front. And now let's talk about my personal favorite, prolonged fasting. All the pros, all the cons, let's get into it. Pro con number one. We'll do the pros first and then the cons again. But this is a really interesting one. So isolated periods of prolonged fasting, aka 24 to 48 hours is usually the ideal time frame, can actually increase metabolic rate by 14%, which is crazy. So you, instead of slowing down your metabolic rate by, getting your body accustomed to very few calories over a long period of time, you're actually increasing your metabolic rate because you're shocking your body. You're getting loads of food on the daily. Your body really has to work. It's gotta really turn things up to get that entire system operating. It's not easy switch for a lot of people, especially if you're not used to fasting. So your body really has to, work itself hard to kind of turn on that other fuel source, which is your ketones. So it does actually increase your metabolic rate, which is fascinating. Very fascinating, because if you think about it, usually whenever you're in any sort of fat loss situation, your metabolic rate does naturally decrease. But this is mind-blowing, because if you can actually lose fat but increase your metabolism at the same time, meaning you can actually eat more whilst losing fat. When I first saw this, I was like, excuse me, say that again. But yeah, that's the bit that really gets me, because I'm okay, wow, I want that. So eating a lot, so eating at your maintenance, eating a lot of food, having constant abundance of food, and then shocking your body with the adrenaline of a random prolonged fast is entirely different to daily calorie restriction from a consistent intermittent fast. So you're consistently, depriving your body. Your body is consistently in starvation mode over a long period of time. Your body is clever. It's very smart. If it thinks it's only ever getting X amount of food, it will adjust itself. That's why the start of the diet is always the best, because you're coming out of abundance. When you're coming out of abundance into less calories, your body's whoa, what's going on? And then it starts, dropping weight very fast. But what everyone finds after, a while of doing any sort of diet or any calorie deficit is that you need to keep decreasing. You need to keep pushing further and further down, like we just spoke about. Otherwise, your body does stagnate. It gets used to it. When you drop weight, it becomes harder and harder and harder the further into a cut that you go. Everyone knows this. That's why diets are amazing at first and then rapidly lose their effect the further you go into it. The increase in metabolism is because we're coming from a place of abundance. So it's kind of like starting a diet, and with that shock of the body, you're shocking the body from an abundance mindset to like, oh my god, there's suddenly not food. We had so much food yesterday and the day before, and now there suddenly isn't any. Let's switch to ketones. And by doing this, we are tricking the body into, you know, rapid weight loss and fat loss and ketone like use without ever actually slowing our metabolisms down. I love science. Okay, so by doing longer fasts, we really get the body in tune with how to actually properly, fully switch into ketosis. So in intermittent fasting, you might get a little bit of it, but you're never like 1000% switched into ketosis because you still have food from like the day before, unless you're eating very, very little or a ketogenic diet, which is hard to do and honestly not that pleasant, so I wouldn't really recommend it. Unless you're doing that, you don't really see a huge like increase in ketosis, just a little bit. But with this, if you're doing over 24 hours, you will really, especially 48 hours, like 2-day fast, your body is like switch into fat burning mode. Like the only energy source that you are consuming is your own fat. Part of that will be a little bit of muscle too, and we'll get into the whole muscle side of things in a little bit because I know my bodybuilders out there, including myself, like I do not want to lose my glute gains. Not fun, and you won't do as long as you do it the right way, which we will talk about. So you really get into the deeper levels of ketosis, meaning that your cells literally transform themselves. Like they change their whole biology in order to be more efficient at burning your own fat. So you're tricking your cells into burning your own fat more efficiently than they would have done without the fast. Another pro is that it gets so much easier. I find prolonged fasting, you're gonna think I'm stark crazy, and I know I sound it because I would have thought the same a few years ago. I'm like, you are insane. But genuinely, I find prolonged fasting 10 billion times easier than intermittent fasting or a diet or restriction or literally anything. Like I've never seen a diet that gets easier as you go along, because I know that like most people are shocked when like I did a 3-day fast the other week and people were like, what, you haven't eaten for 3 days? And I'm like, yeah, I could honestly do another 2 days. I feel great. And they couldn't believe me. They thought I was lying. They thought like, yeah, right, you are lying to my face right now. You've definitely just eaten food today. There is no way you are this energetic without having eaten for 3 days. And they could not believe it. But actually, what you'll find is that the longer you fast for, the easier it becomes, which is wild and not what you would expect at all. Like you'd think that the longer you went without food, the hungrier and hungrier you'd be, and like you'd become like ravenous for food, but actually it's the opposite. Once you get past, I would say, the 36-hour hurdle is what I call it, which is breakfast the next day. So the first 24 hours are quite difficult. If you're new to fasting, they are extremely difficult. And then the breakfast the next day for me is also a little bit difficult because I love breakfast. Love having a coffee in the morning. It's just one of my little pleasures. But once you pass that 36-hour hurdle, so you get past the breakfast the next day, honestly, for me anyway, personally, after that it's an absolute breeze. I don't even think about it. Honestly, I forget about food completely, entirely, and it becomes the easiest thing ever. And you honestly, it's kind of liberating. It gives you so much more free time. You don't have to think about food. You don't have to think about what you're making for dinner. You don't have to cook. You don't have to clean. Like, it's great. I honestly love it. And then the 3rd day especially, the energy, the surge of ketones, and the crazy energy boost that you get, even cognitively, is absolutely wild. And that's really when I'll schedule in a lot of busy things, because I'm like, I can get a lot done. Even when it's time to break your fast, you'll be like, oh, I'll just do it in like an hour. I just have to finish this off first. It's not like, oh my god, I need food. You think of food like, no, actually, I do need that fuel now. It resets your taste buds, your sugar addiction. It makes it so much easier to eat healthy. Like I just mentioned, like if I'm fasting here and there, honestly, eating healthy is so easy. Like it just makes everything else seem so much easier than it ever was, because it gives you this insane confidence. Like if you can not eat for 3 days and have that level of self-determination, you can literally do anything. So it resets your insulin sensitivity, which is a massive one as well. I think it was after, I can't remember the exact number on this one, I think it was either 24 to 48 hours, somewhere in that timeline, where your insulin gets a massive reset. Let's say you're diabetic, it doesn't just instantly get fixed, but the improvement is absolutely there. Even if you're not diabetic, if you're pre-diabetic, or if you just have maybe a little bit of insulin resistance, which is a really, really bad thing because we need to be sensitive to insulin. So increasing your sensitivity means that your cells are responding to insulin in a healthier way and actually uses it rather than increasing the amount circulating in your blood, which can lead to your body not being able to lower blood sugar effectively over time. The higher your blood sugar and the more your body is not sensitive to insulin, meaning that it just keeps throwing more at your blood sugar levels, the worse it is over time, because over time your body gets less and less and less and less and less sensitized to it, to the point where it can cause you to be diabetic and a million other health reasons. So another positive benefit as well to extended fasting specifically is less muscle reduction compared to longer term calorie deficit, while still reducing just as much fat. This is a big one. I really want to talk a little bit about this one because this is huge. This is huge, probably the biggest one for me, because obviously us gym goers, if you follow me, if you watch my YouTube videos, you probably go to the gym, trying to build muscle, do some sort of exercise. It's always a battle between build muscle, lose fat, build muscle, lose fat. So you bulk, you then go into a calorie deficit, you bulk, you cut, you maintain, and you're trying to always balance these things, because then when you're cutting, you're lean, but you're losing a lot of muscle, and you lost a lot over the duration of your cut. So you kind of need to put your calories back up again in order to gain more muscle, and then it's a never-ending cycle of trying to battle it out between the two, and never being able to have the best of both worlds. At the end of the day, you will still lose a considerable amount of muscle gains, especially if you don't cut extremely well and train extremely hard. And if you don't do your cut perfectly, or if you do it for too long, you will lose a considerable amount of muscle. However, when you throw in a period of prolonged shock fast, there's not actually as much muscle loss as, something where your body is constantly in that starvation mode. If you look at it in like a purely logical standpoint, it makes sense for your body to slowly eat that muscle over time if it's constantly getting food every single day, just not enough of it, versus you have an abundance of food, you have some fat stored, your body needs to still preserve the muscle so that you can hunt for food for that quick 2 days that you didn't have it. So it does actually make sense if you think about it in that way. Is that scientific? No, it is not. Is that my theory? Yes, it is. But the science does prove that if you stay active during a long fast, you actually barely lose any muscle at all. You do lose muscle size. You're not holding as much water in your muscles. And within 2-3 days of eating, maybe even less, and also having gone to the gym a couple of times, it's back. It's completely there. As long as you're not sedentary, as long as you're not just for 3 days, you don't actually lose that much muscle. It's still not a definitive yes, but from what I've seen, it doesn't really look like you lose any muscle at all. And not just from what I've seen, from what I've experienced myself, no muscle loss. But compared to a long caloric deficit, definitely more muscle loss, absolutely. But this, yes, my muscles deflate, but then within a few days, they're back to normal. It actually baffles me, because it's just this is such a hack. The pros to strategically doing fasting is absolutely insane and mind-boggling. It wouldn't be right for me to sit here and talk about all of the benefits without also warning you about the cons and the risks and the things involved that you should absolutely know. If you're going to do anything, you need to look at both sides. Never, ever, ever just look at the positives of something. Make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. So a negative thing of prolonged extended fasting is if you are underweight in whatever way, if you don't have enough fat or muscle for your body to consume, it's extremely dangerous. There have been a few deaths of these They usually were the extreme cases, like they were fasting for 300 days or something. I think someone died that was extremely underweight after like 2 months of fasting. But it's like, well, obviously, like, of course, like if you don't have anything for your body to eat, at some point you won't make it, because your body also needs fuel. Like if it doesn't get fuel from external factors or your internal stores, like how do you expect to continue? It's sad, but it all made sense as to why that was the end result, because they didn't have enough on them. That's why if you're underweight, you should absolutely not fast. This is not for you. If you are underweight, if you don't have enough muscle on your body or fat cells on your body, you should not be fasting. Just end of. You should just get yourself to a healthy body fat percentage first, and then think about implementing some health fasts, which is very, very different from fasting for fat loss. We'll also get into that, of how to fast for your specific goals. Obviously, in those situations, that was what was gonna happen. And then there's also another situation as well that can happen, which is called refeeding syndrome. Anything over like a 3 to 5 to 10 day fast, you do run a bit more of a risk of getting refeeding syndrome. If you fast for a long time, and the longer you fast, the more prone you are to this. And if you suddenly break your fast with a huge meal that your body is not prepared for, because if you think about it, your entire digestive system has kind of gone into like switched off, like it's gone into recovery mode, it's gone into repair, it's off, it's not fully functioning right now. And if you just load it with a massive meal, you can run into this thing called refeeding syndrome, which it can actually, you know, either make you faint, cause like a bunch of different health issues. I'll pop it on the screen so you can see, and can also lead to, you know, a passing away. This is more so targeted to people that have been fasting for a very long time. Like if you do a 30-day fast and then you suddenly eat 10, 20 McDonald's cheeseburgers, you're in for a bit of trouble. You really need to break a fast in the correct way, which is not hard to do. It's very, very simple. As long as you do everything correctly, the risks of anything are honestly just so ridiculously slim that they're basically non-existent. As long as you stay under, you know, the 5-day fast mark, like you refeed really well. So what you eat when you come back to it is done correctly, which I will get into in part 2 of how to refeed. It's so important. But as long as you do that correctly, you will be absolutely fine. Like there is really no trouble here unless you have a medical condition. It's really nothing to be a big concern about, but I should really make you aware of this. And again, it's more so for people that have, you know, fasted, not eaten anything for 2 months, and then just had a ridiculously large meal and your body just can't take it because it's like, oh my god, whoa. And there is like this system that occurs. So it's characterized by hypophosphatemia associated with fluid and electrolyte shifts and metabolic and clinical complications. Your electrolyte balance completely goes off whack, and it can be very dangerous. I'll pop a little diagram on the screen, but only really something you should even be worrying about at all if you're doing like a 5-day long fast. I like to keep all of my fasts around the 3-4 day mark anyways, so it's not really something that I take too much into consideration, but it is how I refeed after those fasts is very important to still mitigate any side effects as well. There is a right way to refeed after a long fast, and this is anything over, I would say, 48 hours. After 24 hours, it's not really that big of a deal. After 48 hours becomes a bit more important for sure. You all asked me a bunch of questions on Instagram. I did read through all of them. There were quite a lot though. I think there were like a good few hundred, but basically I'm going to answer some of them now, and I'll also do the same next video too, just to get to all of the questions, make sure they're all answered. So, can you work out while fasting? I would not, like I mentioned before, I wouldn't run a marathon. I wouldn't do, you know, a 3-hour heavy intense weight training session, but I would definitely go on a walk, go on a small easy hike, do something physical but not too strenuous. You don't want to be pushing yourself to the limit while you're fasting. You do not want to be hitting PRs in the gym or, you know, trying to push yourself to the limit. Your body is already under a huge amount of stress when you're fasting. Nothing too strenuous, but also do not just be sat on the sofa all day, because that will actually hinder you. Someone asked about protein and does it hinder protein intake? Obviously, you know, if you fast, you don't consume protein, you don't consume anything at all for 2-3 days, or intermittent fasting, or however you are doing it. But actually, as long as in your diet you're you know, you've got an abundance of food, it doesn't really do that huge of a hindrance to not have the protein for that day or two. Like, it really doesn't do as bad as you think, especially since we are kind of shocking the body. And if your protein is high every other day that you're not fasting, then honestly it's fine. It does affect it a little bit, sure, but you don't just lose muscle if you don't have protein one day. That's not really how it works. If you're in abundance of calories, you can even afford to have less protein when you're not fasting. If you're in an abundance, like if you're bulking, for example, you can even afford to have less protein because your body doesn't need as much when you're bulking, but when you're cutting you need more. So this isn't technically cutting. You are actually in a deficit over the week or month, but it's not really like a consistent low calorie state, which is very different. You're shocking the body, and it's not going to just let go of that muscle if it thinks that it needs to go hunt. And that's why you want to be moving, because when you're moving, your body thinks that it's like hunting or like going to gather or doing what needs to be done for your survival. Yes, it does matter if you get into the extreme fast. If you're going over 10 days without food, yes, it does begin to matter. You need the micronutrients, you need the resources, but your body also has its own resources, and a couple of days without it, you'll be fine. How do you get past the hunger? So I'll actually show you exactly how I do that in the episode 2. But honestly, it's really not as hard as you think, especially when you consume certain things during the fast. Like when you actually like have enough like water, electrolytes, there are certain teas as well that you can have that I'll show you, and certain things that I do which completely get rid of the hunger. It's almost, once you're past like the first few hours, especially the first breakfast, it's so easy. I'll show you how I make it easy because it doesn't have to be hard. I think once you experience it, you'll understand it a bit better. Have all the studies on the benefits of fasting used women as subjects? Actually, no. The majority of studies back in the day, a longer time ago, now there are definitely more women in the studies, but back then it was actually white college males, so frat boys basically. Like white frat boys for some reason were the base of most studies, which is just wrong in so many ways. But yeah, unfortunately those are the base studies that we have to go off with females, and I've personally done a lot of research into females specifically as well for the next video, because it is incredibly different. Like, you really need to fast so differently to males, and the same rules don't apply, which I will go through in detail in part 2. So in part 2 of this 2-part series, we will be covering exactly how to fast for your specific goals. So if your goal is weight loss, you need to be doing a very specific type of fasting. It needs to be done in a certain way so that your body doesn't get accustomed to it, so that your metabolism doesn't slow down. The exact plan you should be following, like how to exactly fast, like what should you be doing. I'm also going to be running through everything to do with girls. So if you are a girl, you absolutely need to watch the next fasting video. Girls should not be fasting the same as men. And then in the second part as well, I'm going to be basically taking you guys through a 3-day fast with me. I'll also be releasing plans in a couple of months time if you want something like that too, because it's like nice and easy to follow rather than making your own. I'm not holding anything back. It's not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to tell you and it's only in the plan. No, like I'm going to give you everything I've got. But if you do want just a done plan and something that's just, you don't have to put too much thought into it, it's just done for you, then obviously it would be really handy, and they're there as well if you guys want them. Kind of break everything down in a PDF form as well, so it's all sort of like broken down for you too. I'm gonna answer the rest of the questions next time because this video is probably ridiculously long already. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you think of this type of video. If just any feedback whatsoever would honestly really make my day. And yeah, I definitely put quite a lot of hours into this, so I really hope that it was informative and actually gave you something of value. Yeah, let me know what you think. Oh, and don't forget to follow me on my Instagrams as well, because I'll post all the updates on there about the videos and everything else. And yeah, I love you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye!